I'm actually going to turn the rest of the presentation over to Dave Struthers. Dave's going to get up and visit with us about an incident of vandalism that happened on his farm March 8th, 2008 at Collins Island. So.
All right, my kids say I got a loud mouth anyway, so you probably wouldn't need the microphone. One thing I noticed when Kent was doing his presentation, towards the end he talked about how what the things they do at the coalition, and oftentimes they said you get what you pay for and they don't charge anything for their services. They would be the exception to the rule. CSIF, since this instigation, since its start, has done a lot of great things for this state, and especially the livestock industry. What happened to us, a little background, my parents moved to this location. This is the sign above the mailbox on their farm, called the home place. The hoop barns that we had vandalized were a quarter of a mile south and about a quarter of a mile east of their home place. The road goes gravel coming in from the west, and then it's a dirt road the other 3/4 of a mile. So it's a relatively isolated site, an old farm site. My grandparents lived there when I was a child. No house there, no yard lights, 8 hoop buildings all in a row. And we're kind of, like I said, exceptions to the rule. We're rather involved in the community. My father started a tractor ride in Collins in 2004. We've done it as an annual event. I've headed it up now since 2005. We do a lot of things with our community celebration, so we're pretty well known in the community and have employed a lot of high school, college-age kids over the past 30, 40 years. Some pictures of the first thing we did when we found it out, it happened on a Sunday afternoon. My brother-in-law, who incidentally interviewed for Kent's job, and Kent got it, so yeah, Kent didn't know that, is the one that found him. It was his Sunday to check the hogs. He went over there and saw a bunch of hogs around in the field. Early March, we had some snow out in the ground yet. The ground was semi-soft because it was starting to thaw. And first off was, oh gosh, the hogs got out and they let the others out. Hogs will root on things and open it up. Well, the pins that held the gate shut were pulled out and stuck back in the top of the gate. So a pig can't do that. So that's the first tip right there. So got a hold of my parents. I was out of town, so I couldn't help. They're trying to bring the hogs back in. Notice a lot of weird injuries from pigs, not just from fighting. This one here, his head's all swollen up, his tongue, so I can't even put his tongue in his mouth. And they found some tracks in the snow around there. So first people they called was the sheriff. Then they brought a deputy, came down, took some pictures. They found some tire imprints, and they found some plastic from underneath a vehicle that was torn off. There's one there, his shoulder's all swollen up, you can't tell as well there, but it was the cruelty. At first we were going to kind of lay low on it, and then the more we thought about it, the cruelty and the inhumaneness of what happened. Because we figured out, okay, these pigs weren't just turned out, they were ran over. The guy that did it, I'm not going to say gentleman because he's not a gentleman, that did it couldn't just cause a nuisance by letting the hogs out. He had to see about running over them with his 4-wheel drive truck. Fortunately, when he was doing that, it tore pieces off of his truck, and those were things that were evidence that were able to be used against him in this. We also, through the coalition, he said, well, let's put up a reward. We talked, I'm active in our county farm bureau. Farm bureau says, yeah, we'll throw money into it. The guy on the cattlemen's is also on the fair board with my father. He says, yeah, we'll put money into it. So we got a reward started rather quickly. And as the investigation went, we found out that this guy that was running over our pigs that night got hung up on one of them and couldn't get his truck off. So he called some of his drinking buddies with the 4-wheel drive trucks to see who'll come pull him out. One of them finally did come and do that. And that's the person I believe that turned in him for doing this. because the reward, you know, the person remained anonymous. They did have some contact with my brother-in-law, and said, I know your family. I know that these things that it came out in the paper that Kent mentioned, there's no feud between your family. This was just done because this guy, when he's drinking, he gets mean. And that was what he thought he wanted to do that night. So a lot of the things that Kent talked about, preventative measures, locking doors, having lights and some of the things, you know, we didn't have that. The types of facilities we had are different than any other, or most of the facilities that have been vandalized in Iowa. Many times you think, okay, somebody's angry because they used to raise hogs and then they didn't expand their operation and markets changed and now somebody put up a big confinement building, and so the big anti-corporate mentality or whatever you might want to call it. So they're angry because now things aren't the way they wanted it to be. Life's different now, and so they're going to attack a so-called corporate or a large confinement unit. And that's, I think, what's happening in maybe in situations such as what's happened in Northeast Iowa, Northwest Iowa. We were, like I said, contrary to that. We were the largest producer in our area, but you know, family corporation, raised on the open market, and these were hoop barns. One of the things was, well, could it be activists that turn your hogs loose? Well, if activists, you know, love animals, they're not going to run over them. So that told us right there that's not going to be the case there. Big thing when you talk to the media was contacted by, or the coalition contacted the media outlets. They gave us a few calls on it, but it wasn't too exciting to them until they actually made an arrest. And when Jonathan Wright, who grew up 2 miles from this location, was arrested, it was a real foggy morning next morning in late March. And Jonathan's grandfather is actually the realtor I bought this farm from in 1985, where this incident happened. And his grandfather is in his late 80s and drove out there. You could hardly see 10 feet in front of you. Came to my parents' place at 6:30 in the morning, and my dad said, well, what are you doing here, Jim? And he was crying, Jim was, and said, my grandson did this to your hogs. He felt so bad. And, you know, Jonathan's cousins are in my 4-H club. I'm their 4-H leader. So rationalizing how this incident happened, it wasn't a disgruntled employee. It wasn't, you know, anything that we could figure out why it happened. There's really no rhyme or reason exactly why. But the media is going to try to get you to say something. And they got to our county sheriff. And they said, well, you know, small towns, was there a feud, or was the families at odds with each other? And the sheriff made an off-the-cuff statement similar to, well, you know how small towns are, you know, sometimes everybody doesn't get along. And that's what made the Register. And several of the TV news stations. The TV news stations basically stayed with that. The Register, if you read farther through the article, they called somebody, probably looked them up on the internet to see what street address they had, to know they lived on the same road that my folks do, to ask that person. That person says, no, I've lived here for all 50 years of my life. I've never known the Struthers and the Wrights to have any problems with each other. So you really got to watch how you deal with the media. And as Kent said, don't let them corner you into something that you don't want to say. Because I was discouraged by Aaron Putsey, who was formerly with the coalition, to speak to them. There were several of them out there wanting to take videos. I did talk to one news station, and they kept trying to ask me, well, why do you think he did this? Why do you think he did this? And I said, you know as well as I do. I don't have any reason. I can't read somebody's mind. So that's a big important thing there. So another thing that Kent made observation to or comment on about the security lights, and it happened to be an employee that was done with that. Maybe one of those things that if you're going to be putting up those kind of cameras or lights, that you kind of do it discreetly yourself, because you wouldn't want an employee to know if he was on camera. So evidently this employee didn't know that, or he's a real idiot. One of the two.
They didn't tell people.
They didn't tell people.
They're just yard lights.
Yeah, just a yard light. So that would be an important thing to do with that. I guess, you know, the main thing you want to do is first you want to take care of your animals in a situation like this. second, you want to, contact the authorities. Don't disturb evidence. We went and picked up that piece of plastic or messed up those tire tracks, that could have really hurt the investigation. And we were just fortunate this all was taken care of relatively quickly. It was within about 3 weeks that the arrest was made. And the gentleman, he did only had to serve about 2 weeks jail time, and he was able to do that kind of on his convenience. He had to pay restitution, which took him about 2 years to pay. And then he's not able to set foot on any of our properties. And he had to go to substance abuse counseling, couldn't go to any place of business where more than 50% of their income came from serving alcoholic beverages. He's now passed, I believe, that probation time, but I haven't heard any problems since then. With that, that's about all I have. There's one more picture in there. Yeah, there's a couple more hard to remember, but yeah, it's not pretty, so I don't want you to dwell on that.
Is there any questions then? I know we're running a little bit long here, but
Yeah, I'm curious, about how long do you think, I mean, these incidences take, I'm not saying years so much, but I mean, people on the farm, how much time do they spend doing some of this stuff? And is there like a top 5 list, like, those are the things they go for?
there's not exactly a top 5 list, but I think on your chairs is a flyer that we put together or a handout that would help you kind of answer that questions, I guess. You can take with you, you can go out to our website, www.supportfarmers.com. It's out there too, to how to better secure your site. So, and it usually takes, it varies. Sometimes it's very hard to catch folks. It may.
No, I mean, how much time have they spent on the farm? Are we talking, half an hour?
It depends on the site location. They can spend hours. They can spend up to a couple hours vandalizing. If it's a remote location and they know that people won't show up at that time of day or night.
That's why I think varying your routine is
vary your routine.
Because a lot of times I've got 5 barns to check, and I start at this one, and I just go in a circle. Well, start in the middle and go both ways. Maybe not convenient fuel-wise or time-wise, but just something like that where they can be caught off guard.
Be unpredictable. Maybe even show up at night. If you think that there's been a minor case of vandalism, they're testing the system, then start showing up at night. Let the neighbors know, let law enforcement know. They may even increase their patrols to law enforcement if it's not in a remote part of the county.
Just have one quick question. How quickly did you report your incident to police? Because I know the one thing that frustrates police is what you mentioned, is that people wait days or weeks and say, hey, yeah, what happened to me?
That was found about 2:30 in the afternoon. It was about 4 o'clock when we called. To be honest with you, not really. I mean, we were always pretty varied there. It wasn't like we went over there the same time every day. We try to just go over there more often now and be a lot more alert about it. We did have a community party about a year later, and we got cell phones. We had several acreages that sold and have new people living in them in the last few years. So we had invited all the neighbors in for a good pork meal, and told them kind of what we do with our operation, how it works, and got cell phone numbers. Hey, if we see somebody loading stuff out of your house, it doesn't look like your car, we can get a hold of you. And you see something that looks weird, call us. I mean, if it's normal, we'll say, oh, thanks for looking out for us, and it's okay. But so that was probably one of the biggest things we did, is get more neighbor involved.